The Velen Empire was the most powerful force in the known galaxy. For nearly 100 years, they had conquered star system after star system. Their warships were massive and deadly. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and kill. And their leader, Emperor Draven, believed that the entire universe belonged to him. Emperor Draven sat on his throne made of black metal. The throne room was cold and dark, lit only by the pale glow of distant stars through the massive windows. Around him stood his generals and advisors, all of them dressed in the dark armor of the Velen military. They were discussing their next conquest. "My emperor," said General Voss, a tall figure with deep scars across his face. "Our scouts have found something interesting. There is a small region of space near the outer edge of the galaxy. We have detected radio signals coming from there. It appears another species has developed space travel." Draven leaned forward on his throne. His eyes were cold and hungry. "Another species? How advanced are they?" "Not very advanced, my emperor. They call themselves humans. They have only spread to a few dozen planets. Their ships are small and slow compared to ours. Their weapons are primitive." The emperor smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then they will fall easily. Prepare a fleet. We will add their worlds to our empire." But before the generals could respond, the doors of the throne room opened. A messenger ran inside, looking frightened. He fell to his knees before the emperor. "My emperor," the messenger said, his voice shaking. "A message has arrived. It comes from the Orvani." The room went silent. Everyone knew about the Orvani. They were the oldest species in the galaxy. They had existed for millions of years, watching civilizations rise and fall. They rarely spoke to anyone. When they did, it was wise to listen. "What do they want?" Draven asked. The messenger held up a small device. A hologram appeared in the air. It showed an Orvani, a tall and thin creature with pale skin so thin you could see through it. The Orvani's eyes were completely black, and they seemed to hold the weight of countless years. The Orvani spoke. Its voice was soft and slow, like wind moving through dead trees. "Emperor Draven of the Velen, we have watched your empire grow. We have said nothing as you conquered world after world. But now we must speak. We have seen that you plan to enter human space. We are here to warn you. Do not do this." General Voss laughed. "The Orvani are afraid of these humans? They must be joking." But the hologram continued. "We have watched the humans for a very long time. We watched them when they were still living in caves. We watched them when they learned to make fire. We watched them when they built their first cities, and we watched them when they destroyed those cities in war. We watched them when they created weapons that could burn entire nations to ash, and we watched them use those weapons on themselves." The Orvani paused. Its black eyes seemed to look directly at Emperor Draven. "The humans are not like other species. When other species face impossible odds, they surrender or run away. Humans do not do this. When you push them, they push back. When you hurt them, they hurt you worse. When you try to destroy them, they become something terrible. They have survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and wars that killed millions of their own kind. And through all of this, they never stopped. They never gave up." Emperor Draven's smile had faded, but his pride would not let him show fear. "What exactly are you telling me to do?" he asked. "Do not enter human space. Do not attack them. Do not provoke them. Turn your ships away and forget they exist. If you do not, you will regret it. This is not a threat. It is simply the truth." The hologram disappeared. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then General Voss broke the silence with a loud laugh. "The Orvani have grown old and weak," he said. "They hide in their ancient ships and fear everything. These humans are nothing. They are a young species with primitive technology. They will fall before our fleet, like all the others." The other generals nodded and laughed as well. Soon the whole room was filled with the sound of their confidence. Emperor Draven raised his hand, and the room went silent again. "The Orvani are cowards," he said. "They have not fought a war in 1,000 years. They have forgotten what strength looks like. We are the Velen Empire. We do not run from anyone." He stood from his throne and walked to the window. Outside, he could see his fleet. Hundreds of warships floated in the darkness, their weapons ready, their crews waiting for orders. "Send Admiral Tova," Draven commanded. "Give her 300 of our best ships. Tell her to enter human space and evaluate these creatures. If they surrender, we will accept their submission. If they resist, we will crush them." General Voss bowed deeply. "It will be done, my emperor." 3 days later, Admiral Tova stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Devastator. She was a proud warrior who had won over 200 battles. She had never lost. She had never retreated. She believed she never would. Around her flagship, 300 Velen warships moved into formation. Each ship was massive, covered in weapons and armor. Each ship carried thousands of soldiers ready for battle. Together, they were a force that had broken entire civilizations. Admiral Tova looked at the star map. A small region of space was highlighted in red. "Human territory. Set course," she ordered. "We will reach the human border in 7 days. Prepare all weapons. Prepare all soldiers. When we arrive, we will show these humans what happens to those who stand against the Velen Empire." The fleet moved forward into the darkness of space. Far away, in a place the Velen did not know about, the Orvani watched. They saw the fleet moving toward human space. They saw the arrogance of the Velen, the same arrogance they had seen in 100 other empires that no longer existed. The oldest Orvani, a being who had lived for over 10,000 years, turned to its companions. "They did not listen," it said. "They never listen. Should we warn them again?" Another Orvani asked. The old one shook its head slowly. "No, they have made their choice. Now they will learn what we learned long ago. Some species should not be disturbed. Some species should be left alone. The humans are one of those species." The Orvani turned away and went silent. There was nothing more to say. The Velen would learn the truth soon enough, and the truth would be terrible. The Sentinel was a small space station floating at the edge of human territory. It was not beautiful or impressive. It was simply a metal box with sensors and antennas, watching the darkness of space for any sign of danger. For years, nothing dangerous had come. The crew had grown bored. Lieutenant Commander Park Suri was not bored. She was never bored. She spent her days watching the sensor screens, studying every signal, every movement, every tiny change in the data. Her crewmates thought she was too serious. They said she needed to relax. But Suri did not know how to relax. She had joined the military after her younger brother died in a terrorist attack on Earth. Since that day, she had promised herself that she would always be watching. She would never let danger come without warning. Suri was 34 years old. She had short black hair and tired eyes. She did not talk much. She did not need to. Her work spoke for her. On that morning, she was sitting at her station when something appeared on her screen. At first, she thought it was a mistake. She checked the data again. Then, she checked it a third time. Her heart began to beat faster. "Captain," she said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. "We have contacts." Multiple contacts. Captain Beek Doan walked over to her station. He was an older man, 53 years old, with gray hair and a face that had seen too many battles. He had fought in the Mars Uprising 20 years ago. He had seen friends die. He had killed enemies with his own hands. He thought those days were behind him. What kind of contacts? He asked. Unknown vessels, Suri replied. She pointed at the screen. 300 of them. They are moving in formation. Their heading is directly toward Colony 7. Doan felt his stomach grow cold. Colony 7 was a small mining world with about 50,000 people. Families, children, people who had never seen war. Have you tried to contact them? He asked. Yes, sir. No response. But I am detecting energy signatures from their ships. Suri looked up at him. Their weapons are active. Dohan stood very still for a moment. He had trained for this. Every officer in the United Earth Defense Force had trained for this. The possibility that humanity would meet hostile aliens was something they had prepared for since the first radio signals from space were detected 200 years ago. But preparing for something and facing it were two very different things. Send an alert to Earth Command, Dohon ordered. Priority 1. Include all sensor data. Tell them we have unknown hostile vessels approaching human space. Yes, sir. Dohan walked to the window of the station and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 300 alien warships were coming. And he had nothing but a small station with no weapons to stop them. May God help us, he whispered. The alert reached Earth in minutes. Within hours, the entire United Earth Defense Force was mobilizing. On the carrier Indomitable, Rear Admiral Choi Yuna received her orders. She read them twice, making sure she understood. Then she read them a third time, hoping she had made a mistake. She had not. 300 enemy vessels were approaching Colony 7. She was ordered to intercept them with whatever forces she could gather. She had 36 ships. Yuna was 47 years old. She had served in the military for 25 years. She had risen through the ranks through hard work and skill. She had 2 daughters back on Earth, ages 8 and 12. Their photographs sat on her desk. Every night before she slept, she looked at that photograph and remembered why she served. She looked at it now. I will come home, she whispered to the photograph. I promise. But she was not sure if that was a promise she could keep. She walked to the bridge of the Indomitable. Her officers were already there, waiting. They were young, most of them. They had trained for battle, but few of them had actually fought one. They looked nervous, scared. Yuna understood. She was scared too, but she could not show it. A leader who showed fear would spread fear to everyone around her. Listen to me, she said. Her voice was strong and clear. You have all seen the reports. An alien fleet is approaching our space. They have not responded to our messages. Their weapons are active. We must assume they are hostile. She paused and looked at each of her officers. We are outnumbered. We all know this. They have 300 ships. We have 36. By normal thinking, we cannot win. The officers shifted nervously. But we are not going to think normally, Yuna continued. We are going to fight. We are going to protect our people. And we are going to make these invaders understand something very important. She stepped closer to them. We are human beings. Our ancestors survived ice ages when they had nothing but fire and stone tools. They survived plagues that killed half the population of entire continents. They survived wars that burned cities to the ground. And through all of that, through every disaster and every enemy, they kept going. They refused to die. Her eyes were hard and bright. We carry that same fire inside us. Every single one of us. Today, we will show these aliens what that fire looks like. We will show them that humanity does not surrender. We do not run. We do not give up. We fight until we cannot fight anymore, and then we fight some more. She raised her fist. For Earth, for our families, for everyone counting on us. We will hold the line. The officers straightened. The fear was still there, but something else was there too now. Pride, determination, the ancient human spirit that had carried their species through every darkness. Yes, Admiral. They shouted together. Una nodded. Then let us go to war. The Third Defense Fleet moved out from their station and headed toward the alien fleet. 36 ships against 300. It seemed impossible. It seemed hopeless. But Una had learned something in her years of service. Hope was not about numbers. Hope was about the will to keep fighting, even when the numbers said you should lose. And humans had been defying the numbers for a very long time. On the Sentinel station, Park Suri watched the Third Fleet move out. She saw the small human ships heading toward the massive alien armada. She felt tears in her eyes. They are so brave, she whispered. Captain Doan stood beside her. His face was grim. They are human, he said simply. It is what we do. And somewhere far away, still moving steadily toward human space, Admiral Tova of the Velen Empire looked at her sensor screens and saw the human ships coming to meet her. She laughed. Only 36 ships? She said to her officers. They are sending only 36 ships against us? These humans are either very stupid or very arrogant. Her officers laughed with her. They did not understand yet. They thought this would be easy. They thought the humans would break and run like every other species they had conquered. They were wrong. The battle began in an asteroid field called Moran's Belt. The field was named after specialist Han Moran, the first human to die during deep space exploration 50 years ago. Her ship had crashed into an asteroid during a survey mission. She was only 26 years old. Now her name marked the place where humanity would make its first stand against an alien invasion. Admiral Tova of the Velen Empire watched the human fleet approach. Her tactical officers had studied the enemy ships and given their report. The human vessels were small and lightly armored. Their weapons were based on simple kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. By Velen standards, they were primitive. This will be quick, Tova said. Form standard attack lines. Destroy them all. The Velen fleet spread out into their perfect formation. 300 warships, each one larger than any human vessel, moved forward like a wall of death. Their weapons began to charge. Their targeting systems locked onto the human ships. Tova expected the humans to try to negotiate, or to turn and run. Every other species did this when they saw the power of the Velen fleet. Surrender or retreat. Those were the only logical choices. The humans did neither. Instead, the human ships scattered. They broke formation and dove into the asteroid field, disappearing behind the massive rocks that floated in the darkness. The Velen sensors lost track of most of them within seconds. What are they doing? Tova demanded. They are hiding, Admiral, one of her officers said. Perhaps they hope to escape. Then they are fools. Send our ships into the field. Find them and destroy them. The Velen fleet entered the asteroid field. That was their first mistake. The asteroids were huge, some of them the size of small moons. The spaces between them were dark and full of dust and debris. The Velen ships were large and powerful, but they were not built for this kind of environment. They were built for open space battles, where their size and firepower would overwhelm any enemy. In the asteroid field, their size became a weakness. Pilot Officer Kang Jisoo sat in the cockpit of her fighter. She was 28 years old, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. She had been flying since she was 16, first in atmospheric craft on Earth, then in space fighters when she joined the military. Flying was the only thing she had ever wanted to do. Now she was doing something she had never imagined. She was hunting alien warships. Alpha Squadron report, came the voice of her squadron leader through her radio. Jisoo here? I have visual on a Velen cruiser. It is moving between two large asteroids. It has not seen me. Wait for my signal. We attack together. Jisoo waited. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She watched the Velen cruiser through her cockpit window. It was massive, covered in weapons and armor. Against her small fighter, it should have been invincible. But the cruiser did not know she was there. And that made all the difference. All units, attack now. Jisoo pushed her throttle forward. Her fighter shot out from behind the asteroid where she had been hiding. Around her, 11 other fighters did the same. They came from different directions, appearing suddenly out of the darkness. The Velen cruiser tried to turn its weapons toward them, but the fighters were too fast and too small. They dove in close, firing their weapons at weak points in the cruiser's armor. Engines, sensor arrays, weapon systems. They hit everything they could reach. The cruiser fired back, but its weapons were designed to hit large targets at long range. The small, fast human fighters were almost impossible to track. They moved like angry insects, stinging and retreating, never staying still long enough to be targeted. Within minutes, the cruiser was crippled. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were offline. It drifted helplessly between the asteroids. Target disabled, Jisoo reported. Moving to next target. This was how the humans fought. Not in straight lines. Not in fair battles where the bigger fleet would always win. They fought with speed and surprise, an absolute refusal to play by the enemy's rules. The battle continued for 11 days. 11 days of constant fighting. 11 days of hiding and attacking and retreating and attacking again. The humans did not sleep. They could not sleep. They survived on stimulants and determination. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they rammed their vessels into enemy ships. When their vessels were destroyed, they launched themselves in escape pods and waited to be rescued so they could fight again. Admiral Tova had never seen anything like it. On the 5th day, she lost her first dreadnought. A human destroyer, badly damaged and burning, flew directly into the dreadnought's engine section. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 3 other Velen vessels nearby. Why did they do that? Tova demanded. They killed themselves to destroy one ship. That makes no sense. Her officers had no answer. Nothing in their training had prepared them for an enemy that would sacrifice themselves so willingly. On the 8th day, Jisoo's squadron was reduced from 12 fighters to 3. They were exhausted. They were running low on fuel and ammunition. Any logical enemy would have retreated to resupply. Jisoo looked at the Velen dreadnought ahead of them. It was the largest ship in the enemy fleet, as big as a small moon. Its weapons had destroyed dozens of human ships. As long as it existed, the Velen would keep fighting. "Orders, Lieutenant?" asked one of her wingmen. His voice was tired and scared. Jisoo thought about her family back on Earth, her mother, who always worried about her, her father, who had been so proud when she joined the military, her little brother, who wanted to be a pilot just like her. She thought about all the people on Colony 7 who would die if the Velen fleet reached them. "We fly straight at them," she said. "We do not stop until that ship is dead. Lieutenant, that is suicide." "Maybe, but if we destroy that dreadnought, we might save everyone else. That is a trade I am willing to make." There was silence on the radio. Then her wingman spoke again. "Then let us do it together." The 3 fighters accelerated toward the dreadnought. The Velen weapons fired at them, filling the space with deadly energy. One fighter exploded. Then another. Only Jisoo remained. She dove through the crossfire, her ship shaking from near misses. Alarms screamed in her cockpit. Warning lights flashed everywhere. She ignored them all. The dreadnought's reactor core was located in the center of the ship. If she could reach it, if she could deliver her weapons directly to that point, the explosion would be massive. She flew into a gap in the dreadnought's armor. The ship's internal defenses fired at her, but she was moving too fast. She launched her remaining missiles at the reactor core and then pulled the ejection handle. Her cockpit exploded outward. She was thrown into space, spinning wildly. Behind her, she saw her fighter crash into the reactor. The dreadnought exploded. The blast was so powerful that it destroyed 47 Valan ships that were nearby. It created a shockwave that pushed asteroids out of their orbits. It lit up the darkness of space like a new star. Jisoo floated in the void, watching. Her suit was damaged. She was losing oxygen. Frost was forming on her visor. "Mother," she whispered. "Father, I'm sorry I cannot come home." She closed her eyes and waited to die. But 14 hours later, a human rescue ship found her. She was barely alive, her body nearly frozen, her heart beating only a few times per minute. They saved her. And when she woke up in the hospital, they told her she was a hero. They told her the battle was won. They told her Admiral Tova had retreated with only 19 ships remaining from her fleet of 300. Jisoo did not feel like a hero. She felt tired. She felt sad for all the friends she had lost. But she also felt something else. Something deep inside her that refused to be broken. She felt human. Admiral Tova returned to the Velan homeworld with 19 ships. 19 out of 300. The greatest military defeat in the history of the Velan Empire. Her flagship, the Devastator, was badly damaged. Half of its weapons were destroyed. Its hull was covered in scars from human weapons. One entire section of the ship was open to space, sealed off because there was no way to repair it. Inside that section floated the bodies of crew members who had died during the battle. Tova herself was wounded. A piece of metal from an explosion had cut across her face, leaving a deep scar that would never fully heal. She had lost 2 fingers on her left hand. She walked with a limp because something had broken inside her leg, but the wounds on her body were nothing compared to the wounds on her mind. She had never lost a battle before. She had never even imagined it was possible. The Velan were the strongest. The Velan were unbeatable. That was what she had believed her entire life. Now she knew it was a lie. When her ship landed on the Velan homeworld, soldiers were waiting to escort her to the Emperor. She walked through the palace halls with her head down. Everyone she passed stared at her. Some with pity, some with anger, some with fear. They all wanted to know the same thing. What had happened? How had the mighty Velan fleet been destroyed by a primitive species they had never heard of? The throne room was cold and silent. Emperor Draven sat on his black metal throne, his face impossible to read. Around him stood his generals and advisors, the same ones who had laughed when the Urvane warning arrived. No one was laughing now. Tova knelt before the Emperor. The stone floor was hard against her injured knee, but she did not show the pain. "Admiral Tova," the Emperor said. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous beneath it. "You were sent with 300 ships to evaluate and subjugate a primitive species. You returned with 19. Explain." Tova lifted her head. She had thought about this moment during the entire journey home. She had thought about what she would say. She had thought about begging for her life, making excuses, blaming her officers. But she had decided to tell the truth instead. The Emperor needed to understand what they were facing. If he did not understand, he would send another fleet. And another. And they would all be destroyed. "My Emperor," Tova began, "the humans are not primitive. Their technology is less advanced than ours. Their ships are smaller and weaker. Their weapons are simpler. But none of that matters. Then what does matter?" Draven demanded. "Their spirit, my Emperor. Their will to fight." She took a deep breath and continued. I have fought many enemies. I have seen species surrender when they knew they could not win. I have seen species run when the battle turned against them. I have seen species break and scatter when their leaders fell. This is normal. This is logical. Fighting a hopeless battle makes no sense. Her voice grew stronger. The humans do not follow this logic. They do not surrender. They do not run. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their weapons ran out, they used their ships as weapons. They flew burning vessels into our fleet. They sent soldiers onto our ships, even though they knew they would die. She looked directly at the Emperor. I watched a human pilot fly her fighter into the core of our largest dreadnought. She knew she would die. She did it anyway. The explosion destroyed the dreadnought and 47 other ships. The room was completely silent. That is not a warrior, my Emperor. That is something else. Something more dangerous. What are they? Draven asked. His voice was quieter now. They are survivors, Tova replied. I studied their history during the battle. Their home world is not a paradise. It is a dangerous place. It has suffered ice ages that covered most of the planet in frozen water. It has suffered plagues that killed millions of their people. It has suffered natural disasters, famines, droughts. She paused. And worst of all, it has suffered wars. The humans have been fighting each other since they first learned to make weapons. They fought with sticks and stones. They fought with swords and spears. They fought with guns and bombs. They even created weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single explosion, and they used those weapons on their own kind. General Voss stepped forward. They sound like savages. Savages can be defeated. Tova turned to look at him. You do not understand. Every generation of humans has been shaped by war. Every generation has learned to fight, to survive, to never give up. It is in their blood. It is in their bones. When we attacked them, we did not face soldiers. We faced the product of 100,000 years of survival. She turned back to the Emperor. They are not brave, my Emperor. Bravery is when you fight, despite being afraid. The humans are something worse. They are relentless. They simply do not stop, ever, no matter how much pain they suffer, no matter how many of them die. The ones who remain keep fighting. Emperor Draven was silent for a long moment. His face had changed. The arrogance that had always been there was fading. Something else was taking its place. Something he had never felt before. Fear. Leave me, he said quietly. All of you, except Admiral Tova. The generals and advisors left the throne room. When the doors closed, Draven stood from his throne and walked to the window. Outside, the Velen homeworld spread beneath them. Cities filled with billions of people. Factories producing weapons and ships. An empire that had taken 100 years to build. Can they reach us here? The Emperor asked. I do not know, Tova replied honestly. Their technology is less advanced. But they learn quickly. They adapt. Every day of the battle, they got better at fighting us. By the end, they were using our own tactics against us. If we send another fleet, they will destroy it. Or they will lose and still hurt us badly. And then they will rebuild. They will improve. They will come looking for us. Draven turned to face her. For the first time in his life, he looked old, tired. What do you recommend? Tova hesitated. What she was about to say went against everything she had been taught. Everything she believed. Peace, she said. We must make peace with them. We must withdraw from their space and never return. We must show them we are no longer a threat. And if they do not accept peace, then we pray they are more merciful than we have been. The Emperor stared at her for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Prepare a diplomatic message, he said. We will offer to negotiate. Tova bowed. Yes, my emperor. As she left the throne room, she felt something strange. Relief. She had expected to be executed for her failure. Instead, she had been listened to. Perhaps there was hope after all. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The Velen Empire would never be the same. They had learned something that would change them forever. There were things in the universe, more powerful than weapons and armies. There were species that could not be conquered. And humanity was one of them. The reckoning had come. And the Velen would never forget it. 6 months after the Battle of Moran's Belt, an ancient ship appeared in the skies above the Velen homeworld. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons. It was old and strange, made of materials that Velen scientists could not identify. The ship belonged to the Arvani. Emperor Draven agreed to meet with them. He had no choice. After the disaster with the humans, he needed guidance. He needed to understand what had happened and what would happen next. The Arvani representative was brought to the throne room. It was a creature so old that its body seemed to be fading away. Its skin was thin and pale, almost transparent. You could see its organs moving beneath the surface. Its eyes were completely black, like holes into a dark place that had no end. The creature moved slowly, each step careful and deliberate. It had lived for over 10,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had watched species conquer the stars and then disappear into history. It had learned patience that most beings could not imagine. Emperor Draven, the Arvani said. Its voice was soft and dry, like leaves rustling in autumn wind. We told you not to enter human space. Draven nodded. His pride was broken. There was no point in pretending otherwise. You did, he admitted. I did not listen. I thought you were afraid of something weak. I was wrong. The Arvani made a sound that might have been a laugh. Or a sigh. It was hard to tell. You are not the first to make this mistake. Many empires before you saw the humans and thought the same thing. Small territory. Simple technology. Young species. Easy conquest. What happened to those empires? They do not exist anymore. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. We have watched the humans for a very long time, the Arvani continued. We watched them when they were still living in caves, fighting with rocks and sticks. We watched them when they discovered fire. We watched them when they built their first cities. It paused and looked at Draven with those endless black eyes. And we watched them when they split the atom. Draven knew what this meant. The humans had discovered atomic power, the power to create energy, the power to destroy cities. They used atomic weapons on themselves, the Arvani said. Their own species. They dropped atomic bombs on their own cities, killed hundreds of thousands of their own kind in seconds. And do you know what happened after that? No, they kept going. They did not destroy themselves. They did not collapse into chaos. They mourned their dead, rebuilt their cities, and continued advancing. Within a few decades, they were walking on their moon. Within a century, they were spreading to other planets. The Arvani stepped closer to the Emperor. This is what makes them different. This is what makes them dangerous. Other species, when they face destruction, either die or learn to stop. Humans face destruction and use it as fuel. They turn their pain into strength, their losses into motivation, their near extinctions into determination. Why are you telling me this? Draven asked. Because you have 3 choices, Emperor, and you need to understand them clearly. The Arvani raised one thin, pale finger. First choice. You can try again. Send another fleet. A bigger one. Pour all your resources into destroying the humans. What would happen? You would fail. Perhaps you would win some battles. Perhaps you would destroy some of their worlds. But you would never break them. They would rebuild. They would adapt. They would improve. And eventually, they would come for you. Not for conquest, for revenge. And humans are very creative when it comes to revenge. The Orvani raised a second finger. Second choice. You can do nothing. Maintain hostility but avoid direct conflict. Refuse to make peace but also refuse to fight. And then? The humans will not accept this. They have long memories. They do not forget attacks against them. If you remain a threat, they will eventually deal with that threat. They will build bigger fleets, better weapons, and one day, when they are ready, they will come. The Orvani raised a third finger. Third choice. You make peace. Real peace. You withdraw from their space completely. You open diplomatic relations. You show them you are no longer an enemy. You give them no reason to come looking for you. Draven sat in silence for a long moment. That is surrender, he finally said. No, the Orvani replied. That is wisdom. There is no shame in recognizing a threat you cannot defeat. We learned this lesson long ago. That is why we have survived for millions of years. We choose our battles carefully. We do not fight enemies who cannot be beaten. You are afraid of them. The Orvani nodded slowly. Yes, we are. And if you are intelligent, you will be afraid of them too. Fear is not weakness. Fear is survival. Emperor Draven looked out the window at his empire. Everything he had built. Everything his ancestors had built before him. All of it could be destroyed if he made the wrong choice. I will make peace, he said quietly. A wise decision, the Orvani said. The humans are not unreasonable. They do not seek conquest. They simply want to be left alone. Give them that, and they will give you the same. The negotiations took 2 years. Diplomats traveled between the Velen Empire and human space. Agreements were made. Borders were established. A peace treaty was signed. 20 years later, the galaxy was different. The Velen Empire still existed, but it was smaller now. They had given up the territories they had conquered, allowed the species they had enslaved to go free. They were no longer conquerors. They were simply another civilization trying to survive. The humans had continued to expand, but peacefully. They explored new star systems, built new colonies, developed new technology. They did not forget the war with the Velen. They never forgot any war. But they did not seek revenge. They simply moved forward, as they always did. On the planet of New Sol, in a small garden near a quiet city, Rear Admiral Choi Yuna sat watching the sunset. She was 67 years old now, retired from the military. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age. But her eyes were still sharp. Her granddaughter, a little girl of 7, played in the grass nearby. She was chasing butterflies, laughing at the way they flew just out of her reach. She did not know about the war. She did not know how close everything had come to destruction. That was good. That was what Yuna had fought for. So that children could chase butterflies without knowing about death and fire and sacrifice. Kang Jisoo came to visit sometimes. She was a vice admiral now, one of the highest ranked officers in the fleet. The scar on her face from the ejection had never fully healed, but she wore it proudly. It reminded her of what she had survived. Do you think there will be peace forever? Jisoo had asked once. Yuna had thought about it for a long time. No, she had finally answered. There will always be new threats, new enemies, new challenges. That is the nature of existence. Then, what was the point of all our sacrifice? Yuna had smiled. The point was to give the next generation a chance to grow stronger, a chance to be ready for whatever comes next. We held the line so that others could build a better wall. Now, watching her granddaughter play, Una remembered those words. She remembered all the people who had died at Moran's Belt. Park Suri, who had sent the first warning. Captain Beak Dawn, who had held the Sentinel station until reinforcements arrived. All the pilots and soldiers and crew members who had given everything. They were gone now. But what they had protected remained. Her granddaughter ran up to her, holding a small flower she had found in the grass. "Grandmother, this is for you." Una took the flower and tucked it into her gray hair. "Thank you, my little one." "Grandmother, why do you look so happy?" Una pulled the child into her lap and hugged her tightly. "Because we are still here," she said. "After everything that tried to stop us, we are still here. And we always will be." Far away, in their ancient ships, the Irvani watched the human world spread slowly across the galaxy. They saw the peace holding. They saw the humans building, growing, becoming stronger every year. The oldest Orvani, the one who had warned Emperor Draven, looked at its companions. "Do you think they will ever become a threat to us?" Another Orvani considered the question. "Perhaps, someday. But that is a problem for future generations to solve." The old one nodded slowly. "Then let us hope our future generations are wise enough to stay on their good side." They turned away and continued watching as they had watched for millions of years. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers. But some dangers were greater than others. And humanity was the greatest of all. Not because they were evil. Not because they sought destruction. But because they simply refused to stop. They refused to surrender. They refused to die. They were human. And that was enough.